Welcome, everyone, to the April 2024 Planning Commission Agenda Review. At this time, I'll turn it over to our Executive Director, Amy Brooks.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, let me get situated here. I have a few updates for you all today. I also wanted to let you all know, I believe Dallas had sent this out in the email, but we will be in this room for agenda review going forward. So hopefully that's comfortable for everyone. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a couple internal updates. I'm really excited to announce that we have filled 2 vacant positions. As you all can see from our agendas, our workload, and this is just a portion of the work that we do here at Planning, but our workload remains very high. And these 2 individuals will help us continue to be responsive to our customers and to the community while also continuing to serve as a resource for all. Kelsey, I'm probably not going to pronounce her last name correctly. Kelsey Bosquet will join us as a planner. She will be assisting with development plan, rezonings, and plan amendments and telecommunications review. She begins her position here on April 29th. And then we have Presley Desso has joined our team. She's actually here. Sitting back there with Allie. She is our new communication specialist, and she will be working on newsletters, social media content, press releases, and creating educational materials and presentations for staff. So we're really excited to have her join us. Okay, now I want to share a few updates about projects. So the CAT Opportunities Mapping Project, this has been on our work program since last summer, but Council finally approved a contract between Planning and CAT and the city. This is for a Federal Transit Administration funded project on transit-oriented development. And CAT received funding to develop this transit map a couple of years ago. And the purpose of this map is to identify where transit-oriented development could blend with mixed and low-income development to provide housing and spur job opportunities. The map will provide the basis for the city to invest in high-quality transit services and may result in recommendations related to some land use changes. Planning developed a proposal last summer on behalf of CAT and the city of Knoxville, and we see this as a great opportunity to leverage a number of different efforts that are currently underway, and we will serve as a convener for different departments working in this space. Some of those efforts include our ongoing work with the priority populations data analysis that we've maintained for a number of years, our work assisting the city with their housing strategy and dashboard, and the general commercial zoning district review that's been on our work program for several years as well, incentives and development review, and then of course our long-range mobility plan through the transportation planning group. This project officially kicks off next month, so we'll provide you all with regular updates on that. So we are also in the process of hiring a consultant team to assist us with outreach for the BREATHE project. Allie Ketchron and our staff provided you all with an overview of that several months ago. But just as a reminder, BREATHE is a project that's funded through the EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program. The CPRG is a 2-stage grant program that provides funding to develop and implement plans for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and other harmful air pollutants. The city of Knoxville is serving as the lead organization on behalf of the Knoxville region, the MSA, and was awarded this planning grant fairly recently in August of last year. And then the city partnered with us to conduct regional outreach, and we hope to kick off this outreach effort in early May. Hopefully you all heard that the city of Knoxville and KCDC received a very large grant recently, $42.6 million from the U.S. Department of DOT. This is really exciting. It's going to fund a lot of infrastructure projects. So as a supporter and key partner, we are really looking forward to supporting them in this effort. And at some point we will get someone from the project team to come and share a little bit more about what the plans are for those dollars. TDOT announced last Friday, some of you might have read the the newspaper reports on this. They intend to study a 17-mile section of the I-40 and I-75 corridor. Their intention is to develop a strategy, a corridor-wide strategy to better address congestion in this highly traveled corridor. The details of that have not been worked out, but exciting that they're taking a high-level view of this. It's been a priority of the TPO for a while to address some of the challenges along that corridor. The growth policy plan is back to a vote at Farragut this Thursday. We are hopeful that it is going to move forward this time. And the land use and transportation plan that you all recommended for approval will go to County Commission on April 22nd. So we'll keep you all updated on the progress of those two important plans. And with that, we're ready to dive into the agenda unless someone has any questions or comments to share. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is number 55. This is a request of the city's Plans Review and Inspection Department to amend Article 2.3 definitions to revise the definitions of independent living facilities. I believe Ms. McGrons is here to speak on behalf of the city.
Yes, good morning. Christina McGrons-Tillery. I'm an assistant city attorney with the law department for the city of Knoxville. Thank you for letting me speak today on this amendment. As you can see on your screen in the bold print, we are adding a couple of sentences here saying that an independent living facility includes a dwelling unit that is newly constructed with more than 4 bedrooms, or a dwelling unit renovated to increase the bedroom count to more than 4 bedrooms is presumed to be an independent living facility. However, evidence may be supplied to the zoning administrator that no portion of the structure is intended for use as or actually used as more than 1 rental unit, regardless of the number of leases. So that is our proposal. It's adding to the definition only. We are proposing this because we continue to see a number of projects coming before our plans review and building inspections folks for single-family, 2-family, and townhouse dwellings with large numbers of bedrooms to be rented out by the bedroom. And this model obviously increases the density beyond the intent of some of our current zoning and functions very differently than, say, a single-family household. We're seeing this type of proposed development at a much increased rate, and this type does not currently fit into a clear category of one of our other definitions. So it has created a little bit of a legal issue for us, which I'll go into later. But we are proposing this as a clarification. This way it will be clear where these types of proposed developments fall into and are addressed in the zoning code. And it also creates consistency with the building code because the number 5 is actually something that aligns with the building code for the bedrooms and the fire requirements. I also want to mention that this proposal was thoroughly reviewed at the law department level and in conjunction with plans review and building inspections as well as policy. We are confident that it meets the requirements and protections of the Fair Housing Act as well as the State Human Rights Act. We want to be sure in this that we're supporting development of housing appropriately and that our zoning code is clear for property owners and developers in the future. So that's why this proposal only adds to the existing definition. And I want to point out as well for the community that this is only going to apply to new construction and projects where they are being renovated to add additional bedrooms. So anything that is lawfully existing, this would not be applicable to those types of setups. So how did we arrive at the 4-bedroom count? Well, we looked first at the census data. Census data shows that over 98% of Knoxville households are 4 bedrooms or less. And we do have some homes that are larger, but they don't make up a large percent, obviously less than 2%. There are some building construction standards, again, that change with that increase of bedrooms, so this creates some consistency for our development community and for our staff in the review process. And it's also key to note that our proposal recognizes that there are going to be some times where a family may just need a large house. You know, if they have extended family that live with them or a large amount of children that live with them, they may just need additional bedrooms. And that's why you see the clause in the proposal starting with however. The evidence may be supplied to the zoning administrator that no portion is intended for use as or actually used as a rental unit. So that would take them out of the definition of independent living facility and put them into one of the categories of dwelling and whatever that might cover, 2-family, single-family, multifamily. It would not be under the independent living facility definition. Our proposal aligns with the density provided by rent-by-the-room structures with the appropriate zoning category in the use matrix. And for example, as you know, our code requires specific dimensional standards such as minimum lot specifications, building height, things of that nature, based on the specific zoning of the land. So from a density perspective, a 30-bedroom duplex that is intended to function as a rent-by-the-room model is not the same as a single-family neighborhood zone like RN1 is intended to be. However, it could be appropriate in RN3 or RN4, which of course are higher density areas, depending on the situation. So therefore, that's why we are proposing this to fall under independent living facility. That will give the Planning Commission the ability to review projects like this as a special use that will come before you. And this aligns more with the type of projects with the intended density. And overall, we believe that this proposal supports our existing neighborhoods while clarifying projects with larger room counts intended to rent by the room, ensuring that they fit in with our zoning code and hit that balance. And this proposal also supports our development community by providing clear paths forward for a variety of types of projects along these lines. So we are here and available for questions if you have them. We have folks from Plans Review and Building Inspections and Policy today to help.
I guess I have a question. What kind of evidence would you need for someone to supply if they were building something that had more than 4 bedrooms?
I think we would handle that on probably a case-by-case basis, but I think that, you know, it's possible we could come up with a form for that, or, you know, if we have the plans and show that there is a residency status that's being met, and, you know, there's a verification of a large family there that's not going to be rented by the bedroom, you know, all of that we would take into consideration in that particular area. This is not intended to, you know, make it harder for families that are of a large size to build to accommodate their family sizes. That's not the intent of this at all.
It just seems like things can change. Someone could build something, someone else takes it over, and then they can start renting it out by the room. I mean, it looks like there's workarounds. And like, how would you define a bedroom versus like a study, or someone says, well, that's a dining room, or, and is this part of like, is this in result of the ordinance that was put before us last month regarding the parking situation in some of these large developments?
The proposal before you today is intended to fix a little bit of a legal gray area where we have these projects that come in that do not fall into a good definitional category. And that's why we're adding this clarification so that it is clear what category they fit into.
Did y'all think about writing a new definition for these type of homes, or did y'all look at is there a group homes definition?
Yes, there are other definitions like group homes, residential care facilities, there's a daycare home, et cetera, so.
And group homes, would it be more appropriate?
No, not in this context, because we're not talking about individuals with disabilities that are needing some kind of care and support.
Okay, and what will happen with the parking how will this address some of the parking concerns?
The independent living facility in Article 11 has its own standards for parking. I can let one of our Plans Review and Building Inspections folks comment, but the standards for the independent living facility is that there's a minimum of 0.65 parking spaces per unit and guest parking of 0.2 per dwelling unit.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I have a question about this for you, but also just to point out, this leads to the same parking standards that were presented last month with the single-family and duplexes of multi-bedrooms, the same calculation of 0.65 per bedroom. This is same amount of parking required with this use. So to answer that. And one question that I have is, I know that independent living is a use on review or a special use approval in RN3. But also the dimensional standards for independent living follows, in the definitions it refers to, it's the same as multifamily. But RN3 does not have dimensional standards for independent living, or sorry, for multifamily. So how do you determine lot size and density in RN3 when there's not a multifamily allowance?
So as part of the special use review process, I'll have to defer to planning on what they would recommend in that situation. But with the RN4 guidelines, I think that we would look to those to determine appropriateness. But you're correct, and that this is not a change to the code that is supposed to fix the issue of dimensional standards. Again, this is to address a legal concern that has come up in the context of how to categorize these particular developments.
And then I've also, obviously this is for specifically indirectly, but student housing in the fort. And when you look at the dimensional standards for RN4, RN5, and RN6, multifamily, and of course, like I said, RN3 doesn't have dimensional standards for multifamily. Multifamily has a minimum lot size of 60 feet. And as we know, most of the historic grid neighborhoods have lot widths around 50 feet, 50, 55, sometimes 60 or 65. So what this does is in Fort Sanders, and maybe not, but from everything I've seen, this would essentially create a exclusionary way of only allowing small single-family or duplexes in most lots in Fort Sanders. So in the area where we're trying to increase housing for students, my understanding is that, you know, if you have a 50 by 150 foot wide lot and you want to do student housing in Fort Sanders, you would, in every scenario, assuming if you're in an RN zone, of course there's commercial zones there as well, but you would be restricted to only being able to do a 4-bedroom single-family house or maybe an 4 and 4 bedroom duplex, right? You couldn't even do like a 5 or 6 bedroom.
Well, if you have the 5 or 6 bedroom, you're right that it would fall into the independent living if the units are going to be rented out per bedroom. I will say the variance process is still available in cases like that. I can't ever comment on what the BZA will grant versus what they won't, but of course, hardships are always related to the land and its own characteristics. So lot size, lot shape, topography, issues of those nature are always relevant in those discussions as well to provide adjustments from the code.
In most BZA meetings that I've been in, when there's been a question of lot width related to number of units or amount of use, from what I've seen, that's not being considered a hardship because, yeah, you could always do a single family or a duplex. So I don't see that as being a viable option for this. And I guess everyone has a different opinion on how we should address the needs for student housing in the fort, but I just think that this is very appropriate for multifamily type uses, but I definitely have some concerns about the implications of this in Fort Sanders.
And to clarify as well, a lot of the projects that we're seeing, we're not talking about a 5 or 6 bedroom structure. We're talking about a duplex with, say, 30 or 40 bedrooms. And so, those are things that we are keeping in mind with this particular definition change. If there is a more, appropriate number, of course, we can evaluate that as well, so.
I have a follow-up question from that. If you have a duplex with a lot of bedrooms, I've never seen one with that many, but let's say you did, building code has that, from a life safety standpoint, has that under control by pushing that into the IBC instead of IRC. So it doesn't, from a building code, life safety standpoint, it doesn't matter if you call it a duplex, because they're going to look at it and say, no, this is congregate living, and you're going to obviously, what is the benefit of, from a zoning standpoint, what is the difference there of whether it's called a duplex or it's called independent living?
Sure. So if you look at the use matrix in Article 9, duplexes are allowed potentially in RN1 and RN2, which are single-family residential neighborhoods. Now, they are allowed there as a special use, but, you know, it is conceivable that a duplex with 30 bedrooms could go into an RN1 or an RN2 area. That is out of alignment with the intent of those zones, which is, again, low density and single-family residential. So this is more to align with what the intent of the zones are.
Yeah. So should the bedroom count be increased maybe to, you know, if it's a 10 or 15 bedroom per unit type of thing? Because 20 or 30, yeah, that definitely makes sense for the RN1s or 2s. But did staff look at maybe a higher threshold than 4 bedrooms?
We looked at available data, and the one that we cited was for 2 reasons. Number one, going with the census, showing that over 98% of the bedrooms or houses in Knoxville have 4 bedrooms or less. So this proposal would affect less than 2% of the construction and the buildings, the structures that are existing. And not only that, but this aligns and provides some consistency with the building code, where those 5 bedrooms kick it to different standards. So that is the basis for why we chose that particular number, but that is within Commission's purview to discuss.
I'll let someone else take it.
Yeah. So if you do 5 bedrooms and it gets categorized as a independent living facility, does each bedroom then count as a unit in terms of the parking calculation?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct. So if you were to do a 40-bedroom duplex, you would have to provide the 0.65 and 0.2 for the parking. That comes out to 34 spaces. But then you would have, potentially, if you're within the transit area, you would have that reduction that could bring you down to 24. So that was an example I kind of walked through with staff earlier, just to provide kind of some concrete baseline numbers.
It seems to me like this is just a loophole for what we saw last month, based on Logan's comments about lot sizes and all the dimensional standards. We're bringing back the parking requirement that I roasted them. I mean, that's just, frankly, that's dumb, given that we just passed missing middle with no parking requirements, and we've been over the fact that, you know, the fort is a walkable community. We want it to stay that way. So I guess my question here is, what is the issue that the city is actually trying to address? Because I think we can all agree that there are better ways to define this without effectively limiting the availability of affordable housing, which, as you all know, is a huge problem in Knoxville, particularly with the students, particularly with young people. And so it just kind of blows my mind that the city keeps trying to push through this policy that limits housing. I mean, that just can't be the city government's stated position.
So again, this is something that we are proposing to fix a legal issue, because again, with these types of developments, they do not fit neatly into any particular definition. So that's
Right,
why
but
the
I'm saying
clarity
you
is
can make a new
needed.
definition, and I understand there being a legal issue, but now you're trying to create a loophole. And I really feel like if it was a legal issue, the law department would have defined the evidence that you need to bring forth to get around this. But instead, it's just a, oh, we don't know thing.
Well, it's
And
not
I find that a little unbelievable.
It's not a we don't know thing. It's left flexible so that we can anticipate a lot of different situations. There are, you know, uncharacteristic of my family. Someone else may have extended family that lives with them. They may have a large number of children. You know, the family makeups, we don't want to start defining. That's what we used to have in our old zoning code, was a functional family.
You're going to have to make them define it by coming before the zoning administrator or whoever, or special use on review for somebody that wants to build a 6-bedroom house is now going to have to come before us and explain how many kids they have. or the landlord's gonna have to come say, hey, I'm just trying to rent by the room, and we don't have any evidentiary standard for what they're supposed to tell us.
Well, again, we're leaving that flexible so that we can anticipate other situations. We can't possibly define every single piece of proof that would be relevant
I
in
mean, I
these
understand that, but you
situations.
can have evidentiary standards. I mean, the federal rules of evidence, the Tennessee rules of evidence, they're there, as you know. So I just find it a little unbelievable that all of a sudden we want to be super flexible when, in my opinion, this is just a loophole to get us back to where we started from in the beginning of March. And I think that it's, frankly, as the city of Knoxville, not you personally, but I think the city of Knoxville needs to take a good look at the actual problems facing this community and quit trying to push through stuff that's going to limit housing for people that need it.
Commissioner Adams?
Thank you. So we're without lights here, so that's why I keep raising my hand. One of the things that Katie said was about the creation of a different categorization. And I apologize if this has already been gone over, but why was that route not taken in this proposal?
This definition is what we have historically started with for large developments, which is why we chose to include it in here. It also is a little bit less of a heavy lift in terms of having to update also the use matrix, potentially use standards. So it also is a much smaller tweak to the zoning code to include it here. And again, historically, this is what we have used as a starting point for these types of developments.
Well, I think that's a good teaser for Thursday. This is going to be an exciting topic among a very lengthy agenda, not only today, but for Thursday. So appreciate all of the input and comments. Let's try to save some for Thursday too, if we can. All right, next, Executive Director Brooks.
Yes, we're going to move on to agenda item number 34. This is another ordinance amendment that has a little bit of history to it. And you all have heard this previously. These were originally recommended for approval by this body and forwarded on to County Commission. They also included drive-through facilities. The amendments that Michelle's going to go over with you in just a minute here do not include the drive-through facilities at this point. We are continuing to work through those proposed amendments at the request of County Commission, but we've separated out these because they are unrelated to the drive-through portion. Michelle will cover this.
Thank you. So as Amy just said, these are going to be land uses that are added to the CA and CB zones. And just as a refresher, this stemmed largely from the Alcoa Highway Corridor study, though that's been a while ago now. But even though this is a recommendation of that study, because we're proposing to add uses to these zones, it would apply countywide. And so this has been looked at a little bit more closely in light of that study. This would be a short-term solution until such time as a UDO would be developed. And again, just as a reminder, some of the things that came up while we were talking about this when this came before you before was the distribution of the CA and the CB zones. So there's a lot of little, as you can see here, the little red speckles. So there's a lot of CA zones that are not really along major corridors, kind of in the rural areas that if you look at the uses allowed within the zone, it seems like they wouldn't be very impactful when you just add them to that mix. But when you look at where the CA zone and CAB zones are applied countywide, you kind of see you need to look at it with a little bit more of a fine grain. The distribution of the CB is not quite as problematic. Those do occur more along the county lines, but you can see along in here, again, just a little bit of scattering around these rural areas. And so when you look at the range of intensity of uses, you guys are all familiar with this already, but ranging from single family on the low end to industrial on the high end, and it kind of steps up a little bit as you go along. What we found when we looked at this was that in the CA zone in particular, you had single family houses that were allowed and then commercial developments that were allowed, but anything that's outlined in red was missing. So you basically could have a single family house and a commercial development, but you couldn't have a townhouse, a triplex, fourplex, a multifamily structure, which to us really didn't make a lot of sense. The CB zone doesn't allow any residential uses, so it's proposing to add some of those. And again, these are where commercial developments and single-family houses already coexist, so adding more residential types of development into the mix allows for more transitions along these areas. And so digging into what we are proposing, so by right, on behalf of Knox County Codes, we've added in clinics, medical office, dental offices, and other medical uses of a similar nature, and that's to be permitted by right within CA and CB. Also houses, duplexes, upper-level dwellings, and multifamily structures or developments with density up to 12 units per acre, dwelling units per acre, also by right in both CA and CB. And looking at that a little bit more closely, the first provision under that is for mixed-use developments and upper-level dwellings. Density would be calculated based on the total acreage set aside for any uses permitted on review, uses permitted or permitted on review in CA. And so what that means is it's basically looking at the entire parcel, and if you have, say, a McDonald's in part of the parcel and you're wanting to build something else in the other part of the parcel, it uses that density over again. So to avoid double dipping for apartment complexes and other types of residential developments, we specify that that would be applicable for mixed-use developments and upper-level dwelling units only, to kind of allow more of the uses that people were stating they were interested in, as some of the feedback that we heard from Advanced Knox. Also, a Type A landscape screen would be provided along property lines adjacent to single-family residential uses, and that's kind of already a provision within commercial developments and industrial developments when they're close to or when they're abutting a residential, single-family residential use. So this kind of takes that multifamily and puts that in that same category to offer some protections and some buffers against that. In the CA zone, we are proposing for, or actually in CA and CB, we're proposing for houses, duplexes, upper-level dwellings, and multifamily structures or developments with density of up to 12 to 24 dwelling units an acre, and that's uses permitted on review. And then that's got that same provision for mixed-use developments and upper-level dwellings to have that same density calculation, and that's also calling for that landscape screen. So the standards in the CA zone, CA and CB, the height is going to be 15 feet, or well, that's supposed to be 45 feet, sorry, 45 feet or 4 stories versus 45 feet or 3 stories. So the actual footage of the height is the same, it's just the number of stories that could be allotted within that height that we're changing, or that we're proposing. In the lot area, the houses and duplexes in CA, that remains the same. We are proposing 2,000 square feet per dwelling for attached dwellings. And for multifamily, we're proposing that to be based on road classification and the growth policy plan designation, which I'll go through in just a minute. And for setbacks, we are using the same as the RB zones. Those standards would apply to all of the housing types that we are proposing. Within CB, everything's basically the same. It's that 45 feet or 4 stories versus the 45 feet or 3. The difference is that we are adding in houses and duplexes as use, and we're proposing 7,500 square feet for the first dwelling, and then 5,000 square feet for additional dwellings. We're keeping that 2,000 square feet per dwelling for attached, and then again, multifamily would be based on these 2 criteria, setbacks also as regulated in RB. And so looking at how we've looked at the density for both CA and CB, we are proposing up to 1 dwelling unit per acre in rural areas, or up to 2 if the property meets the criteria for 2 dwelling units acre as specified for rural areas in the growth policy plan. Up to 5 dwelling units an acre in planned growth areas if the subject property is located along a minor collector or a local street. And if it's on an arterial or a major collector street in the planned growth area, we would allow up to 12 units per acre to be considered. And then in urban growth areas, which of course are closer to the city, we would allow up to 24 dwelling units per acre. And so that is what the proposal is. I'm happy to, oh, we have one more slide, sorry. So if further subdivision is proposed for residential uses, this kind of addresses what would happen in that situation. So that's just saying the maximum allowable density couldn't exceed the density that it would have been permitted prior to the subdivision of the properties. And then the remaining density after the subdivision would be noted at the plat at the time of the subdivision. So that's just kind of providing breadcrumbs, so if somebody does do that and they want to transfer density at a later time, it allows us to kind of see what that density was to kind of help us track how that gets transferred. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
If I could just pop in before we turn over to questions, I just want to note, obviously, our staff, Michelle and Mike and others, have put in a lot of effort into these ordinance amendments, but also wanted to be sure to note that these have also been worked through with our working group, as representatives from County Commission, Mr. Mullins, representatives from the planning advocates, as well as representatives from county codes and engineering. Just wanted to share that with everybody.
Thank you.
I guess I do have, excuse me, one question. I get, the way I'm reading it, it almost is like a mixed use. It allows more of a mixed use because in the county, there is no real commercial type mixed use. I mean, is that kind of the goal as a stopgap before the UDO gets created?
It does allow for that, but it also allows for any of those other residential uses to be added. So right now, you couldn't have multifamily in CA or CB at all. So it does allow for just like your typical apartment complex building to go in there, but the upper level dwellings that we're providing or that we're proposing does allow for more of a mixed use. So commercial on the bottom or an office on the bottom with residential above that you'd find in more of a mixed use area.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great amendment, and you can definitely tell by the document that you guys spent a lot of time on it. I think it's great. And from a practical matter, just one quick comment is, I have heard, in being a developer and have seen situations where you've got a piece of CA or CB, which are on major thoroughfares, that would be good, yet the seller is not willing to allow someone to build multifamily on it because they're afraid they have to downzone the property to multifamily in order to build apartments. But this would allow that to be, and still in a good area, because I think you classified it well with, in protecting the rural areas with, tying it to is it a major collector or a rural road? So, good job, thanks.
Thank you.
What's the reasoning for retaining single-family residences as an allowed use within CA? I guess I think about it both in the county and I've seen it in the city, but like if we envision these areas being, as part of advanced Knox, sort of corridors or higher density, why would we allow a single-family residence?
And I think that goes again to how it's scattered throughout the county. If it was along the major routes, then I think it would make sense probably not to have that in there. But because you do have sprinklings of that zone in the rural areas where a house would be perfectly fine and probably preferable, then it kind of allows that to occur without being out of compliance with the zoning ordinance. And I think it also, because in some areas too, there's like maybe broader swaths of CA and CB where you might not want that higher intensity commercial development to encroach as far into that area. So it might make sense to have some of those residential uses to be able to transition from a corridor back down to where residential would be located.
Thank you, Michelle. Now we're going to move on to item number 54. This is another minor amendment to the city zoning code. And I'll turn over to Ms. Hillman.
Okay, so the planning is recommending an ordinance amendment to add a residential care facility as a special use in the OP Office Park zoning district. The intent of the OP zone is to accommodate large office developments and office parks/campuses. The campus environment is actually mentioned twice in the purpose statement as the intended development form. It also emphasizes an environment where there are employees and potential services provided for said employees. The definition of a residential care facility is a licensed institution providing care of persons in need of assistance, services, or supervision in their daily life. And this can be of a medical or non-medical nature. Examples include nursing homes, assisted living facilities, hospice, and continuum of care facilities. The definition is potentially expanded to independent living facilities, but only if it is considered part of that continuum of care model, which is a concept that involves guiding and tracking patients over time through varying intensities of health service and care. The intent of the OP zoning district and a residential care facility are closely aligned in that they involve professional employees and emphasize a campus-like setting. The OP district permits by right several uses that are not directly associated with an office per se, but do involve employees and may benefit from a campus. These uses include a drug treatment clinic, an educational facility, specifically university or college or a vocational school, a hotel, and a place of worship. Special uses that aren't defined by an office environment but do have staff and potentially a campus include a healthcare facility, an arts and fitness studio, and a halfway house, which is for people transitioning back to society from a penitentiary. A residential care facility is similar in nature and potentially less intensive than a halfway house or a healthcare facility, so we propose that a residential care facility join them for consideration as a special use. Happy to answer any questions.
We will move on to agenda item number 25. I'll give them just a second to change computers. This is Samuel's case. This is a request for a 14-lot subdivision on North Shore Drive, just west of Harvey Road on the county line. Which one? Did I skip one?
Scott Smith, 46. Or you must have a.
We, yes, we have a revised one, so the one in front of you, that item is being postponed. So we thought we'd discuss it next month.
Thank you, Amy. Staff is recommending approval of this 14-lot subdivision on North Shore Drive. It is included in today's agenda because we have received several public comments regarding this case. The property is located at the edge of the county's jurisdiction, adjacent to Loudoun County. The property is zoned PR at up to 3 dwelling units per acre. It was part of a larger 24-acre rezoning in 2003, which included the Oak subdivision to the north across the street. The Oak subdivision has 56 lots yielding a density of 2.59 dwelling units per unit. This proposal has an approximate density of 3 dwelling units per acre. From the aerial view, you can see that the property is adjacent to a residential subdivision in the Loudoun County. The Planning Commission has recently approved a rezoning for this property for PR up to 3 dwelling unit on the northeast corner of Harvey Road and North Shore Drive. There is a blue line stream going through the property. The blue line stream shown in blue in the plan essentially splits the development into 2 parts. There are 12 lots with frontage on the proposed internal public right-of-way off of North Shore Drive, and 2 lots will have access from Harvey Road. The public comments mention a potential drainage issue. This proposal has 2 detention ponds in 2 of the 3 common areas. The applicant is requesting a reduction in peripheral boundaries as shown on the plan. The property boundaries run along the center of the North Shore Drive and Harvey Road, as no right-of-way was ever dedicated for these public roads. Because of that, the 35-feet peripheral boundary is measured from a distance of 20 feet from the street center line, instead of what we typically see from the property boundary. Staff is recommending approval of the requested peripheral boundaries due to the blue line stream and shape of the site. The public comments also mentioned a potential traffic issue. This proposal, the proposed number of units does not warrant any traffic impact scope analysis. North Shore Drive is a 2-lane minor arterial street, while Harvey Road is a minor collector street. Happy to answer any questions.
You guys all got it out earlier. Okay. Let's move on to agenda item number 10. We're going to switch computers again. Turn this over to Mike, this request is to rezone one lot of a previously approved subdivision under construction.
Okay. Thank you. Let me get this started. Okay. So this one's a little bit of an odd one. So the applicant is requesting a rezoning from planned residential up to 4 dwelling units per acre to planned residential up to 4 dwelling units per acre. It's only for this one lot in the newly, or still developing Dorchester subdivision. And what staff is recommending is denial because it'll make the rest of the subdivision non-compliant with the planned residential to 4 dwelling units per acre zoning. I'm not going to go through all the history on this, but basically 2006, there was a larger property rezoned to planned residential up to 4, which you can see is the large property here. There was a concept plan approved for about 73 lots, and then later on, a larger subdivision proposed the same year, which was withdrawn. That concept was eventually expired. In the meantime, about 29.5 acres were sold to a person to the north, which then left a little bit less than 20 acres for the subdivision. A new subdivision concept plan was approved for 66 lots. In 2016, 2019, 70 lots were approved. And in 2021, 9 additional lots were approved. In that time, the acreage of the property started changing as they got more accurate information on the boundaries of their site. In 2021, it was noted that the 79 lots that were proposed would go slightly over the 4 dwelling unit per acre maximum, so they're 4.06 dwelling units per acre. There was a condition that during the platting stage, they verified the acreage, and if they go over the density limit, they got to bring the density or the number of lots down. So when the subdivision was platted, it was noted that they were over the density limit. So this what was going to be a lot just turned into a future development area, or it's not a buildable lot. So the idea from the applicant is to rezone that into its own planned residential district, therefore being able to plat one more lot. If they do this, then the remainder of the subdivision just goes over the density limit. It would be 4.08 dwelling units per acre. So that's why staff is recommending denial. Really, they should have rezoned the entire development before they subdivided and sold lots.
This is not what PR is for. I'm asking a question, like,
Well, I mean, it's 4 subdivisions, yes, but it's just it's an issue with the number of units that they're permitted and what they are wanting to have. So.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
How did we get past the 4 per the acre again anyway? I mean, there was a note on the plat, but there had to be a final plat, right?
So there was on the concept plan, because of the acreage, a lot of times, this is my kind of assumption, that we had concept plans based on not 100% data. And so not knowing during the concept plan if their acreage was 100% accurate or not.
Because of right-of-way dedication or whatever.
Or maybe they haven't surveyed it, or who knows. That there was a condition that said, during the platting, which is, you've got a surveyed piece of property at this point in time, you know what the acreage is. If you go over that density threshold, then you've got to reduce the number of lots. And they were so close, I mean, they were just 0.06 dwelling units over. They were very close to that acreage to allow that 79th lot. Didn't want to not allow that to happen if they actually did have the acreage.
So now we're only talking about one lot.
Correct.
And the mechanics of that, of what you described, would be to rezone the entire subdivision to like 4.1 or something?
I mean, that would have been the ideal situation.
But you can't do it now because you got all these homeowners.
Yeah, you have to get the homeowners to agree to it.
Right. And what is that piece like? It's encumbered under the plain residential zoning district
Um,
or not?
I mean, it is zoned plan residential. It's just part of the acreage of the entire property that gets, you know, they just go, if they create another buildable lot, it just goes over their density that was approved. That's the gist of it.
So mechanically too, if you don't mind me, Vice Chair, just a question. So if that lot was not included at all, it goes over the density now too? Or let's say it was
Yeah.
subdivided or platted off, completely separate. Does the rest of the subdivision stand on its own?
No, if they, so basically what you're seeing here, the calculation is, you know, if they zoned it RA, for instance, that acreage then would come out of the planned residential district, therefore you have a smaller area for the planned residential district, same number of units, you're still gonna go over the density limit regardless. Even if this property was rezoned to planned residential at 5 dwelling units per acre, which would be allowed under the LDR land use, and then you know, just, we don't do this anymore, we don't allow transfer of density from one PR district to another, but if you did that and just say like, okay, well, let's make it part of the mix, you still don't get to that 79th unit.
Okay, to clarify, the 78 lots that are platted are all compliant with the density right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This little sliver should have been basically platted as common area, and it would have, the entire thing would have remained compliant.
Well, I mean, it's still compliant this moment. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, it's not a buildable lot. It's extra area. It's not stated as common area. That'd be, you know, the ultimate preferred route if this does not become a buildable, like, you know, if it doesn't get rezoned to allow the additional lot. But otherwise it just stays under private ownership, just
Right.
as like
Right.
a parcel.
Okay. So, yeah. Trying to squeeze along.
One more question. Since these have already been, the building out has already been done, is the lot that's right beside this sliver in question, has that been sold?
I believe it has.
Sure.
A lot of these lots have already changed ownership from the original developer, or from the builder.
Yeah, I can't remember if the one next door is actually built on yet or still under the builder's ownership, but many of those in that area are already sold and built on.
And I'm just imagining the scenario of the owner, that being sold, someone's living there or getting ready to live there, they bought it under the understanding that that was just a big empty space beside their house, and now all of a sudden it could change at the last minute.
I mean, that's a possibility. If you go out there, this looks like a house lot. If somebody went to the site, they probably would not know that this was not a buildable lot.
So Mike, do we have conditional zoning in the county?
Yes.
So even though it's not the intent of what we're talking about, and I'm not suggesting that we're doing this, but if you did rezone it to 6 per the acre or whatever it is with a condition that only one house gets built on the lot as shown, would that not?
I mean, you could do that. I don't think you need to, just because 4 dwelling units per acre, you're only going to get one lot or one unit anyways.
Okay. But the condition, so there's no precedent or somebody doesn't try to
Yeah.
get around something but it would say that the intent would be to provide an exhibit that it's a one lot, one house, one unit. So you can't put a duplex on it or something crazy like that.
Yeah, I mean, you could do a condition, I'm not sure it'd be necessary, but, because you really wouldn't be able to get 2 units on it regardless.
Okay. And just, this does not matter about anything. You just said that it's in the sector plan, it's in the LDR, which is 1 to 5. Is this inside this new growth boundary too as well, or no?
I'm fairly certain it is.
Yeah.
This area was pretty well into the
Yeah.
planned
Okay.
growth area before anyways.
Thank you.
Okay. Can move on to agenda item number 14.
Okay, so this is Whitney Warner's case. She's not here today, so if I stumble through just a little bit, please bear with me. Okay, so this is a rezoning request on Powell Drive in the Powell area, so just northeast of Clinton Highway, which you see here, and Emory Road is to the north, so this is Beaver Creek. They're requesting CA, general business zoning. It's about just barely over 3 acres. Has frontage on Powell Drive, which is a major corridor. So the only access that it has currently is through Larkspur Lane, which goes down the Clinton Highway. I mean, as we noted, it does have frontage on Powell Drive, but it currently has no access to Powell Drive, which is a TDOT facility, so it does require TDOT approval. The south side of Powell Drive is a mix of uses, including mobile home park to the east, single-family subdivision and office, industrial and commercial uses to the south and southeast. Powell Drive is a 5-lane road with a turn lane and sidewalks. It was constructed in 2016. So the street was constructed to relieve traffic on West Emory Road through downtown Powell, near Brickyard Road. Clinton Highway to the west end of Powell Drive is an auto-oriented commercial corridor, and Emory Interstate I-75 interchange is to the east. In 2012, the CA zoning was approved across the street for Food City. That's here at the intersection of Powell Drive and Clinton Highway. That CA zoning was recommended for approval because it was an extension of the zone and is compatible with the scale and intensity of the development in that area. And that property also has access to Clinton Highway. The CA zone is for general retail, business, and services. This location is not appropriate for general commercial retail uses with single-family residential adjacent to the south and the mobile home trailer park to the east. Medium to low intensity zoning would be preferable at this location. So the mixed use special district as part of the sector plan does allow consideration of the CA zone. It does talk about not recommending commercial industrial zoning next to residential uses that are outside of the mixed use special district. The residential uses that are adjacent are within the mixed-use special district, but I don't see those going away anytime soon. So as we mentioned, the property does have frontage on Powell Drive, which is a major arterial street. I'm talking to TDOT, they would likely not allow a full access to Powell Drive because of site distance issues. So if somebody did seek did get commercial zoning and did seek an access to Powell Drive, they'd be limited to right in, right out, and then have to install a barrier in the median so that people cannot physically turn left or turn left into the site either. So as a recap, we're recommending denial of the zone because it is incompatible with the surrounding development and would encroach into the existing residential area. Any questions?
Any questions? Doesn't look like it. All right, let's move on to Mike's next one, is agenda item number 15. Taylor Forrester is the applicant.
Okay, this is a rezoning request from agricultural to planned residential up to 2 dwelling units per acre. It's on Choteau Road, near the south end of the Choteau Peninsula, next to the Choteau Marina. Staff is recommending approval of the planned residential zone up to 1 dwelling unit per acre because it is consistent with the surrounding development and permitted residential intensity. The F floodway zone will be retained. And I'm sorry, I messed up a couple of my slides here, but anyway, I'll just explain it real quick. The red line is the F floodway zone boundary, so it will remain to the east basically the river. There is a gap between the F floodway zone and the TVA 820 line, elevation line, that would be, if this was approved, it would get rezoned to planned residential. We don't typically allow density below the 820 to count towards density on the site because that is encumbered by TVA. It's a small area, but just something that everybody seems to be mindful of. The site does have a substantial amount of hillside protection on it. There is a fairly large flat area on the river side of the property. They do have 2 access points. Obviously, Choteau Road, which does have some slope constraints. And then there's also a subdivision road to the north where sub-out does touch their property. And as I mentioned before, there is a fairly large flat area on this site. There's existing houses that are part of this rezoning. Part of the subject site is zoned commercial, which is kind of down here in these trees. That commercial zoning will be retained. They're not changing that zoning. And as mentioned, staff recommendation is for 1 dwelling unit per acre.
For the density calculation, would that be a needed added condition of what's calculated, or is that just what the staff does automatically?
The density for the
The
hillside
contour,
protection?
like the TVA line.
Oh, the TV, yeah, it'll just be through the development plan review process. Yeah, we'll address that then.
Mike, they can't access that Choteau Marina Way as opposed to the other access point north of there through that neighborhood?
Yeah, so the houses along the river are currently accessed through Choteau Marina Way, which is part of the driveway system for Choteau Marina, at least on the north side there. I guess it depends on what kind of development they do and whether like a true road or private right-of-way is required. That might make it a little bit more complicated to connect through that site if a public road or a private right-of-way is needed. So basically, if they're creating lots, they need to have either a private right-of-way or a public road. And
At least
Choteau-
2, at least 2 access points in.
Well, it may just only need 1 access point,
Okay.
but I could, yeah.
Mike, would it be a requirement to, we talk about connectivity, would it be a requirement of this development to hook through that other subdivision?
It's not, there's nothing in our regulations say that they have to. I mean, it would be a consideration. It could be a consideration, but it wouldn't have to.
And is this zoning assuming septic systems or assuming a sewer system?
I think they were, well, right now there's not sewer to handle a larger, I guess, compact style of development. They are looking at alternatives to septic.
Would it have any additional influence on how many units, whether or not it was septic or
No,
whatever?
it's purely something outside of necessarily our review. It'd be working with the utility district and health department to figure that out, how they want to accommodate. But, I mean, the most straightforward process is septic on larger lots. And then from there, it's sewer, and then if there's other options available to them, they can seek that.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I will say, I don't know if this was part of your question, is that It did influence our recommendation, was the lack of sewer currently available on the property.
That what?
It, it did impact our, I mean, it was part of our considerations for our recommendation.
My question would be is, like, there was another subdivision that Chris Brown did not too long ago where he put in a system and it accommodated his whole development. And it's not out of the reach to think that they could put a system in, but it wouldn't be reasonable with 1 unit an acre. But if they put a system in where it might work out where the utility company might maintain it or something like that, does that have an effect on the property units?
Ask Director Snowden or Mr. Elliott to weigh in. There's been some conversations that have been had with the utility districts as we've gone through the growth policy plan process. Do you all?
Yeah, Commissioner Levinson, we, as part of the growth policy amendment, we did add some language in there that if it's just a a septic system that, you know, requires very little to no maintenance, we're okay with those. But where you get into these private systems that do require routine maintenance and more permitting through the Department of Environment and Conservation, we would require the utility agency in this district, which would be First Utility, to confirm that they would maintain that in perpetuity.
So just a follow-up on that, Director Snowden, and a clarification, I guess. I guess because the way I would see it is if you've got, it doesn't matter if it's KUB or West Knox Utility or First Utility District. I mean, if you've got a utility district that's willing to maintain or take ownership of, doesn't matter if it's a pump station or gravity sewer or some sort of sand filtration septic, I guess in my opinion, I'm asking yours, I mean, that's effectively, it's no burden on the homeowners. It's not, if something goes wrong, they're going to take care of it. So I guess in my view, I would almost see that as the same as having gravity sewer or something along that line. Is that accurate?
Yes, that would, we would assume as long as the utility provider, whomever it was, accepted long-term maintenance of it, we would consider that to essentially be a sewer system, whether it be a low-pressure sewer, gravity, or this. It would be one and the same in our opinion.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to agenda item number 17, and this is another one where we're recommending a density less than what's being requested.
Yes. So this is a request to rezone from agricultural to planned residential to 5 dwelling units per acre. It's on Black Ferry Road. We're recommending 1 dwelling unit per acre, basically because the planned residential zone allows clustering of units away from environmentally sensitive portions of the property, and infrastructure improvements are needed before higher intensity zoning is established on Blacks Ferry Road. And I'll kind of go over that in just a second. So there is quite a bit of single family in the area. Very little of it, when I say single family, I mean like lot size standards. This is the existing land use map. Very little of it has access to Black Ferry Road. Most of them have access back to West Emory Road. The existing zoning on Blacks Ferry Road is predominantly agricultural. There are a couple of exceptions. There's a small subdivision to the north that's planned residential for 3 dwelling units per acre. There's a small area zoned RA. This is for a few lots. But everything out in a small little section down just south of the subject property zoned RA as well. The large subdivision to the south of the property has no access to Blacks Ferry Road. It's all internal back to West Emory. In the sector plan, it's all low density in this general area, including along Blacks Ferry Road. The property does have a little bit of hillside protection on it. Currently, it's a farm property, it's an agricultural property. Fairly, the grades really aren't too bad. It does have a stream that runs through the front of it, so no matter how you access the lot, you're going to cross the stream. And you see that there is a little bit of stream or hillside protection on in the middle of the property and towards the rear. It's nothing too steep, but it's still there. So Blacks Ferry Road itself is marginal. It's 17 to 18 feet wide. But the real problem is Blacks Ferry Road at Emory, and particularly looking to the west, southwest. You can see from this image, I mean, really, you'd be looking a little bit further back in this intersection through this hill at cars. You can see a vehicle just barely in the distance here on this curve, which is about where this star is, somewhere around there. By county standard, the sight distance would be 450 feet. It's a 45-mile-per-hour road. And you're looking straight through that hill back around that curve. No way you're going to get that sight distance. Even at a lower speed, there's a little sign on West Emory that says, hey, watch out, the dangerous intersection ahead. Consider slowing down. That's not regulatory. That's more advisory. So if you went with 300 feet, you're still looking through the hill. You're not even to where that car is here in the image. So really, this intersection needs to be improved before we look at adding more intensity to Blacks Ferry Road. And that's the reason why we're suggesting the 1 dwelling unit per acre. It would allow the clustering of units on the site, still allow the same intensity for the most part that the ag zone currently allows, which is one house per acre.
Okay. Seeing no hands raised, we will move on to agenda item number 21. And this is another one that we are recommending a density less than what the applicant, Storm Schuler, is requesting.
Okay, so this is in South County, just southwest of Chapman Highway. So it does include a sector plan amendment. Currently, sector plan is agricultural. They're requesting rural residential, and then they're requesting to rezone from RB, general residential, and agricultural. So it's about half and half with the zoning on the property now. And they want to go to planned residential up to 2 dwelling units per acre. Staff is recommending approval of the rural residential land use classification and approval of planned residential zoning up to 1 dwelling unit per acre with a condition of that a portion of the parcel delineated in Exhibit B, which I'll show you in a moment, shall be left undisturbed, which is essentially the steep hillsides on the property. So as I mentioned, it's about half and half for the zoning on the property. RB, it's about 40 acres, agricultural about 44.5 acres. The agricultural portion is predominantly the steeper parts of the property, but there is a good portion of the RB that's in the hillside protection area as well. Sector plan in the area is predominantly, almost essentially agricultural. The agricultural and the rural residential land use are fairly compatible with each other. There's a small area of low-density residential off of Highland View. That property is owned, I think it's planned residential up to 1.47 dwelling units per acre, something like that. They've clustered all the units to the lower in the flatter portions of the site, so I think their lot sizes are around 5,000 square feet each, or maybe just a little hair less than that. But the density overall is much lower. It's lower than 2 dwelling units per acre. Existing land use, there is quite a bit of smaller lots on this area, especially just to the north, excluding some of the newer subdivisions that have really small lots. But this area has been developed since the 60s or so. It is zoned RB. It's about 2.5 dwelling units per acre, excluding the right-of-way. So you can kind of get an idea of what size lots we're talking about. Just a quick aerial of the site. Anything you see with trees on it is steep. Anything without trees is relatively flat. There is a potential stream through the property that cuts through the 2 ridges and then to the north. And here's the hillside protection plan. If we use the 2 dwelling units per acre as a baseline, the hillside protection would recommend, or the slope analysis would recommend 1.36 dwelling units per acre. From staff perspective, we're more comfortable with 1 dwelling unit per acre on the site. being in its rural character and general location. There was another criteria to look at. So the growth policy plan has two criteria for allowing density above 1 dwelling unit per acre. One is one we've used quite often, which is doing a traffic letter, allow consideration up to 3 dwelling units per acre. That's considered like an extension of low-density residential land use. There's another provision, 3.3, that, 3.2, start with, that just allows consideration up to 2 dwelling units per acre in the rural area, but then you have to take into consideration 3.3, which has its own set of density restrictions on steeper slopes. But it doesn't use the hillside protection area. It says all slopes on the property. So on a baseline, I just kind of did a quick area calculation on some of these areas, and I think it would be about 1.2 dwelling units per acre is what the growth policy plan would recommend. So it's not too far off of what the slope analysis already recommends. So the non-disturbance area, as I mentioned before, includes the larger ridge on the south side of the property, kind of following the 25% slopes, and then the same thing in the ridge in the middle of the property. And I mentioned that there was a potential stream between the two ridges. There's actually another one that cuts through the front of the property near the road. So road infrastructure-wise, Pickens Gap is about 22 feet wide. It's pretty good as you get to the site. So this is looking north from the Tarkland Valley Road intersection, which is essentially the northwest tip of their property. So if you're looking at this, it's Tarkland Road is like right here, that intersection. But as you look south from Tarkland Valley, it gets down to about 18 feet wide, and the road changes quite a bit as you head towards Blount County. So as I mentioned before, staff is recommending approval of the rural residential land use, the PR zoning up to 1 dwelling unit per acre with the condition of non-disturbance for the areas delineated in this exhibit.
Mike, looks like there's 40 acres zoned RB already. So could a person, I'm assuming a person, could submit a concept plan in the RB zone and just cut out lots, right?
Correct.
And
The
that-
current RB zoning allows single-family houses, I think 10,000 square
10,000
foot
square foot
lots.
lots, so that's 2.5 an acre or something?
Probably somewhere in there.
Okay.
You could duplexes are allowed with slightly larger lot sizes, and then multifamily is also allowed.
Right. Okay, thanks.
I've got a question that's not necessarily specific to this case, but, and I don't know if staff will know anything about this, but just from a regional planning standpoint, I was told recently that Blount County had a big change with their zoning that restricts it to only single family or something like that, and even like cut out future subdivisions. I don't really know the details, but I just didn't know if maybe, because this is so close to the line, it kind of made me wonder if staff knows anything about any recent changes in the region, and specifically in this area with Blount County zoning wise.
That sounds familiar, but I don't know the details.
Okay.
It's real.
Yeah.
Loudoun County as well.
Okay, we'll move on to our last agenda item that we've identified, which is agenda item number 29. It's Henson Development.
This one is, so the Planning Commission reviewed and approved a plan for the site back in July 2023. Same number of dwelling units, 46. They've just modified the site design. So, and I'll show you the previous design in just a moment. So as I mentioned, 46 attached houses, what they're proposing, that equals 11.91 dwelling units per acre. The property was rezoned from planned residential up to 8 dwelling units per acre to planned residential to 12 dwelling units per acre in May of 2023. So that allows that little bit extra density. They are asking for a peripheral setback reduction on the west boundary from 35 feet down to 20 feet. And then on this kind of northeast corner from, again, 35 feet down to 15 feet. The rest of the peripheral boundary will remain at 35 feet. So staff is recommending approval up with 5 conditions, and there's one major condition that I'll go over in just a moment. So this was the previous plan. Their intent was to keep the units, for the most part, in this kind of inside the driveway circle, so they'd have a green space in the middle. There was a few more lots to the north. So you didn't have units that backed up quite as much to the external boundaries. Decided to switch things up and go with the new site plan. There is some landscape screening proposed, what you see. So the trees that you do see on here of what they're proposing, there's a recommended condition that a type C landscape screening be included for the rest of the boundary here and just a little bit in this northeast corner behind the 2 adjacent units. And the type C landscape screening it's more of a distributed landscaping. It's not going to create a consistent visual screen, so it's more of a partial, so it's a partial screening. I thought that was more appropriate in this location, but a more like a type B, which would be more of a full screen, could be an option here as well. The architectural design is pretty much carried over from the last plan, so what you're seeing on the plan on the right side of the sheet is really the last plan. It's just really here just to give you an idea of what's proposed from an architectural standpoint and scale standpoint, but that's not the exact layout. Existing land uses in the area, there is attached townhouses across the street from on the south side of Westland, some more just to the east on Westland, and if there was a little bit, go a little bit further to the west on Westland, there's more attached in apartment complexes as well. This is right on the edge of the city boundaries, so across railroad tracks on the north side of the railroad is the city, south side of the railroad is in the county. There is planned residential up to 7 dwelling units per acre. As I said, that was the attached units across the street, and kind of follows the existing land use medium density across the street, and this is what the property is as well, MDR. It's primarily a vegetated site now. There is some minor clearing that's happened already. There'll be more clearing. There's really no condition or anything as part of this proposal just to keep any particular amount of trees. There is re-landscaping proposed. And so as I mentioned, the staff is recommending approval with the condition of providing additional landscaping as shown.
Can you say again, with the original plan, how many units there were total?
It's the same.
It's the exact same number. Do you know why the shift was made?
I couldn't tell you. Applicant could help.
Any other matters that we'd like to discuss? If not, we're adjourned.